Others have outlined some important ideas, but I feel like the main source of the original poster's issue is that adult men don't exist as a positive force in society outside of their ability to produce. Men from about the ages of 14 to 70 are generally expected to provide some service to society. The most valued men in society are those that do the most and produce the most. Boys get more of a pass because they are not yet seen as producers, so leeway is viewed as a good thing. However, there is a rude awakening for many men around the age of 15 to 19, when they go from being automatically accepted and cared for to looking like they are losers if they don't have a good career path. What's really scary is that you can be a monster like Harvey Weinstein or Jeffrey Epstein, and people will love you and praise you only because you are good at your job. Weinstein and Epstein are exceptions that were caught. There are many more powerful monsters walking around that will never be exposed. The message is pretty clear to all adult men. Outside of your ability to produce for others, you are pretty much worthless. There are exceptions to this, but overall, it's very difficult to be seen as a valued person in society without producing something. I think this is why there is often a strong negative reaction to men who don't seem to play by these rules. Some men really can't stand effeminate men or men who seem to get a pass. Normal men feel like this is an unfair application of societal rules. It feels insanely unjust to see certain men get love, attention, and acceptance for actions that would get them essentially ostracized. As such, talking about problems is counterproductive to getting attention, love, acceptance, and status. It's better to figure it out on your own than risk looking like a loser. This is why men often feel betrayed when a person they have confided in tells other people their secrets. It's a very real societal risk, and spreading it around can intensify your weaknesses. Also, another interesting aspect to this is how confidently showing a weakness is actually a characteristic of a strong, competent man. By showing a clear weakness confidently, the assumption is that there must be a good reason why the man is showing his weakness. He must be that much more powerful in other aspects of his life to compensate for the weakness. Regardless, most men experience early and often the negative repercussions of showing true vulnerability. Story 1. I think because of a continuous pattern of being neglected by people that I loved and thought cared for me. Don't get me wrong, no one should care for me more than me, but sometimes you just need a helping hand. Those same people who are upset with me when I don't want to open up to them are the same ones that did nothing when I asked them for help. One time, an ex straight up told me that my problems weren't bigger than anyone else's. I had just lost a friend in a car accident. She had cheated on me, and my family was on the brink of falling apart. For the longest time, I felt that my mourning and depression were the very things that caused her to cheat. I thought it was my fault that everyone turned their backs on me. I felt that if I was taking more than I was giving at any given moment, I would become undesirable. It's almost sad that I'd rather suffer and want to die than go through the pain of losing people again. I am working through things, though. Story 2. Personally, there are 2 reasons. Firstly, people do not listen just to listen. They always want to tell you how much worse their problem is. So, I save both of us the trouble and just listen. The second reason is that they will belittle you for having problems. At the end of the day, I stay quiet and listen to everyone else because I know that is the only reason they are around. They just need a soundboard. With that in mind, I sincerely apologize for this rant and hope you have a wonderful day. Story 3. I talk about my problems, but I never ask for help from friends or family. I pay a therapist, but it's because I pay her that I can justify asking for help. Asking for help makes you seem less manly, and you get devalued by men and, more importantly, women too. I hear female friends talk about wishing guys would do that, but they think men who do are a turn-off and men aren't completely clueless, so they see that and act accordingly. Story 4. Because a lot of men lose friends when they open up, they learn never to do that again. That being said, the one time I became so depressed that I contemplated ending it all, I finally came clean to a friend while blackout drunk the day before I planned on hanging myself. My entire fraternity took it upon themselves to keep an eye on me and basically let me cry into their arms for an entire year. Every single girl that I consider to be my friend who discovered this severe sadness turned around and pretended like nothing had happened. Literally, I had a female friend walk in on me sobbing, and she turned right around and walked out of my dorm. Every single guy immediately hugged me if they saw even the slightest hint that I was going to break down. It was a good lesson to learn that men are naturally very empathetic and will almost always be a provider, even to their fellow men. Story 5. It's because men are taught that they have to uphold an image of strength. That image can't be upheld when you're crying in a corner because stress, life, and other things are catching up to you, despite everyone having to deal with some levels of stress in their lives. It's a really bad social standard that causes more harm than good. And it is a damn shame that good people are basically shamed for being human. Story 6. Bill Burr and Patrice O'Neill made a joke about this. Essentially, we're not socially allowed to leave ourselves vulnerable. Like other commenters have said, it's generally okay for men to speak with their friends, but women tend to dismiss our issues. At least that's my experience. I've never had a significant other or female friend ask about my feelings or about my troubling past. I've broken down and cried in front of my friends, and it ended with everyone embracing one another. This may be why men hold their friends in such high esteem. I cried in front of a few female friends and lovers, but I just felt ashamed and embarrassed for it because they sort of disassociated. Men are raised to be stoic and punished for crying or being emotional, especially in a machismo Hispanic household like the one I grew up in. Story 7. I talk about my problems with my friends all the time. They talk about theirs as well. I really think it is all about finding friends that will understand your problems. I was severely sexually, mentally, and physically abused from about 5 to 13 years old. I'm also a combat veteran and a recovering alcoholic. I have plenty of issues and insecurities. I've been to one-on-one and group therapy. Here are the problems that I have faced. With the exception of my wife, daughter, and doctor, every female I have tried to talk to about this, including other family members, have been very dismissive, even other sexual assault survivors. They like to play the one-up game and try to make it about themselves. I don't believe this is with malicious intent. I really think they are trying to show empathy and that they understand, but I think it comes off as dismissive and selfish. That's just my experience with it. That's why I think it is super important as men to talk about this stuff with other men who have similar experiences. Story 8. In my experience, women like talking about problems just for the sake of talking about them. Men like talking about problems to solve them. That means that men limit the number of people they talk about problems with. When a girl's car breaks down, she talks with all her friends about how much it sucks, how it ruined her day, what cars she likes, and so on. Guys talk to their car friend who tells them, "You need a new timing belt." That's it. I have no problem talking about my issues. I just don't talk about them with people who I don't think can help me with them. Story 9. The sole value that men have in this world is what they can provide. And having a problem means that you have a weakness in your ability to provide. Therefore, having problems reduces your value as a person. Of course, men don't want to talk about that. Story 10. Honestly, I just don't see the purpose in it. Why talk about my problems with somebody who has no ability to solve them? Occasionally, I do open up, but only if it's for a very practical reason, such as the need to explain my actions in order to avoid them being misinterpreted. Edit. Thank you for all of the responses. A bunch of you actually make really good points about the merits of opening up for one's well-being. Story 11. Men tend to be less emotionally open than women, but it's an untrue stereotype that men never talk about their problems. I've had friends who have opened up to me about depression, breakups, suicidal thoughts, etc. Some men are more open than others. We just tend to handle things in a different way compared to women, so I think some women see men as somehow emotionally stunted. I don't think that's true. As I said, I think generally we just handle things differently. Story 12. When I broke down crying in front of my girlfriend, she left me on the spot. It's funny because she was a person who couldn't make up her mind about anything. I guess the one thing she was certain about was not dating vulnerable men. 3 years. And you just need to listen to them to realize it. They always love to say how strong I am and how well I handle the bad things that happened in my life. This might sound like I am a lost cause, that I gave up on this, but I say this with the certainty of my life experience and what I observe in others. You can be stressed or sad. Everyone has sympathy for that. But if you ever make the impression that you can't handle your own problems, most people will turn away from you. Only saints, maybe family members, or people with a helper syndrome will be willing to help you. The thing is, we are all dealing with stuff, and ask yourself who wants to be in contact with someone who is negative and depressed when they have a whole lot of their own problems going on. I really feel that this is the message this life gave me. Handle your own problems. Story 13. Do not be weak. Be strong. Toughen up. Be a man. Men do not cry. These are all things our society perpetuates. We see it on television, we see it from other kids in high school, some even see it from their parents. It is basically ingrained that men should not be emotional. It has been changing more so in recent years, which is really good, but change takes time, unfortunately. Story 14. The unfortunate truth is that men are only valued if they provide something to women and children. Showing weakness is a sign of deviation from that norm, and therefore being less desirable. Until attitudes towards men change, this type of thing will not be resolved. Story 15. It takes a much stronger bond for two guys to open up than it takes between two women. I will not open up about anything even remotely emotional to someone if I feel even a hint that the person is not genuinely interested in listening and helping. And that kind of bond is very hard to come by in life in general, not just for men. Story 16. I am a dude. Can confirm. It is coded in my DNA to never ask anyone for anything, for any reason, under any circumstance. My parents are the sweetest, most generous, and loving people that would do anything for me or give me anything I asked for, even at 31 years old, and I would rather be homeless than take advantage of their generosity. Call it stubborn, dumb, proud, asinine, whatever. It is just in my bones. I cannot change it. Story 17. I think for us men, it's really important to have at least one friend that you can open up to. I didn't really realize this until I became best friends with a girl, and then I realized how important it was to have someone to open up to, as it made my problems much easier to deal with. Story 18. This reminds me of that girl who posted on Am I the Asshole? Saying she basically thought her macho boyfriend was weak and less attractive because he opened up and cried to her about being raped by his male cousin when he was about 10. Then a guy posted on relationship advice saying he was considered traditionally masculine with a buff build, a beard, a fade haircut, and all that. But he wasn't into rough sex or bondage, discipline, and sadomasochism like his girlfriend was, and she dumped him for it because he was too vanilla. It sounds like an isolated incident, but he said every girl he ever dated wanted him to nearly choke the life out of them in bed. It's interesting that lots of people out there are curious about why men keep to themselves on stuff like this. At the same time, plenty of other people, male or female, shut men down at the slightest sign of emotional vulnerability. And yes, that first woman got downvoted and received an asshole rating. Story 19. I used to have a very toxic group of male friends, and everything with them was a competition. They gossiped a lot behind your back to make fun of your vulnerabilities. It's hard to open up when you realize they are going to use your vulnerabilities to attack you and feel better about themselves. One thing I particularly remember was that one of my friends in that group was losing weight and actually building quite a nice gym body. When the rest of the group noticed it, they started to call him homophobic slurs and mock him about it. There was one time that we were in a wings restaurant, and he ordered a salad and a lemonade, and the toxic ones kept pushing him to order wings and beer, like a man. When he finally opened up and told us that he decided to take care of his body because he was having intimate problems with his wife due to his overweight, the toxic ones opened up an alternate WhatsApp group to make fun of his performance issues and make memes about that issue behind his back. That circle of friends had been very close since the high school days. We used to be supportive and friendly with each other, but as soon as adulthood arrived, the whole ego competition started, and it was a constant race to be better than the other one. Having more money, having more stuff, being a better provider, and being more manly, etc. For me, I was kind of blind about how harmful the whole situation was because it was very gradual. It took me a while and a good therapist to realize all the messed up things that were normalized with that group. 3 of us eventually cut all ties with the toxic ones, and we faced some sort of angry digital intervention to try to lure us back into the toxicity. It didn't work. It's hard to open up because this kind of toxicity is very normalized in my generation, and you're programmed to think that the best way to deal with vulnerability is just to man up and suppress it. I have a new group of friends now that are more open, sensible, supportive, and understanding of each other. And my mental health is improving steadily. It's actually easy to talk about things with each other and get good advice to resolve our issues. I'm glad that newer generations seem to be more aware of the toxic masculinity problems and are actually addressing them. I foresee a better future with a future generation of dads teaching their kids to be more supportive instead of more competitive. Story 20. Depends on your friends, I guess. I have different groups of friends for different needs. One group of friends I have are my council of spiritual advisors. We talk about our lives, we're vulnerable with each other, we share our feelings, and we hang out to do that. These are my Alcoholics Anonymous friends and the people with whom I have the deepest bonds. Unfortunately, with my civilian friends, there's just not that understanding of mutual vulnerability, and it's just a different dynamic. The question you need to ask is, how do you develop trust with another person, and what does it mean to trust someone? And how does this apply to both friendships and intimate relationships? Trust is love free of fear. More than that, it's love that's free of the fear of judgment. You build trust when you are able to be vulnerable with someone and expose that which makes you insecure. That, in turn, gives someone else that permission to be vulnerable as well. I sincerely believe that mutual vulnerability is what allows people to grow closer and build their trust. It's about the feeling of being safe with someone. The feeling that you can express your true self to another and not be judged. Not only not be judged, but loved and accepted for it. Because underneath it all, what we all want is to be loved and accepted for who we truly are, good and bad. In terms of intimate relationships, this is why cheating on a lover is so damaging to the affected party as well. It is not as much about the sex as it is about the breaking of trust. Because how can you ever fully trust someone again afterward? So why do men not talk about their feelings with other men? Because they don't have trusting relationships, and they're afraid of getting judged. Trust is easy to cash in but hard to build. Story 21. I used to talk about my problems a lot, thinking it would help, but then the feeling of resolution diluted over time. It came down to three things practically. No one knows how to help you because you're you. Everyone is trying to figure themselves out, so why make someone else try and figure you out? There's more risk than reward. I've come to the point where I've accepted if I talk about my problems, people will not be friends with me, and it's mostly the truth. I have more acquaintances than friends, and even though I'm not okay with it, I'd rather lose an acquaintance than a friend. It's a very unhealthy mentality, and I'm seeing someone for my issues, but at the same time, it's reaffirming.